Earlier this month, Todd Bedsman told us migrants in Tapachula felt defeated by Donald Trump's victory. However, Blaze Media national correspondent Julio Rosas spoke with migrants in northern Mexico, and they're telling a different story. He joins us now to discuss this. So, Julio, what have you heard from the migrants that you've been speaking with in northern Mexico?
Yeah, so right now I'm in the state of Oaxaca, and it is interesting, right? Because different parts of the country, the migrants are in a different part of their journey, and so every single person that we spoke to in Oaxaca, they all said that they're obviously disappointed that Trump won the election. They obviously wanted Vice President Kamala Harris to be the president. But they said that even despite that, they're desperate enough and they're praying that they'll still be able to get to the United States. And so, at least in this part of their journey, they're still going to move ahead with trying to reach the U.S. Mexico border before January 20th. And I even asked them, well, if you don't make it to the border before January 20th, before Trump officially becomes president, what are you going to do then? They still said that, well, we're just going to see what happens because there's no going home for us. The vast majority of those I spoke to were from Venezuela, Central America as well. So there's still a lot of people, not as many as when the Biden administration was in full swing, but there's still a sizable number of people who are still trying to reach our border.
Julio, what is their impression of the risk to them? You said they're willing to come anyway. So what do they think they're risking? Is it just to be deported and then try to get back? Do they between a rock and a hard place, you say, it sounds like, because they can't go back. So what do they think is going to happen to them when Trump is in office?
Well, one guy said that they're praying to God that Trump will have a change of heart. I think at least for us, I don't think that's going to happen, right? Just because of the seriousness of the problem with the border crisis. Because the main difference now is that obviously the incoming Trump administration has taken a hard stance, not just against the migrants, but also the Mexican government. And it does appear that the Mexican government is playing ball, at least for right now. And that's an important distinction, because whenever caravans were broken up, even as recently as this year under the Biden administration, Mexico didn't deport the migrants from Mexico. They simply broke up the caravan, dispersed them through the rest of Mexico, so that the optics of a caravan appearing at once at a single part of the border did not happen, because that obviously would make the Biden-Harris administration look bad. And so Trump is now really saying, we're not going to do that game anymore. When you disband a caravan, you disband them completely, and you don't let them continue in smaller groups to reach the U.S.-Mexico border. So it remains to be seen, and this is something that the Trump administration needs to be keenly aware of, and I think they are aware of it. But they definitely need to make sure that when a caravan in the coming months and in the coming years is broken up, it's because they're removing people from Mexico and not allowing them to reach the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah, so let's look ahead. Let's foreshadow this, because you're saying right now that people they're still going to try and come across the border and hoping that Donald Trump is going to have a change of heart. We don't think that's going to happen. But what do you think it's going to look like? Will there be more migrants, in your opinion, trying to make their way from southern Mexico all the way up to our border before we do get Trump inaugurated on January 20th?
I don't think so. And it's because as we were traveling from the capital of Oaxaca to the eastern part of the state, which is where our interviews took place, our drivers were saying that even as recently as 3 months ago, the mountain roads going north, had a ton of migrants walking alongside the highway. And we didn't see that. We didn't see that until we got to the most eastern part of the state. And so I think that's just because, again, the rhetoric from Trump's campaign, and now that rhetoric has power behind it, because he is going to become president next month. And that's the key difference, right? Because under the Biden-Harris administration, not only were they telling the migrants that it was going to be the easiest way for them to come into the country illegally, but also they'd be able to stay in the country, at least for the time being. Now, we have people like President-elect Trump, we have Tom Homan, the incoming border czar, Stephen Miller. They're all putting out the message that not only are we going to seal the border, but if you get into the country, we're going to deport you. You are going home. And that is a very Obviously, it's a very stark difference from what has been happening, almost for going on for 4 years. And that's the big change that the voters wanted. And that's why, a big reason why Trump won in November. And so we are starting to see that effect, that desired effect from American voters now happening because, yes, there are still migrants obviously trying to make their way through Mexico, but it appears to have, those numbers have appeared to be lowered dramatically enough to even where locals are saying we're starting to see a difference from even a couple weeks ago.
So Julio, you're there now. Can you tell us what Mexico is actually doing? Like when we say Mexico is cracking down, right? I mean, those are pretty abstract words for Americans to hear. Are they going to deport people themselves? I mean, we've seen the videos of hundreds of thousands of people, right, within Mexico. Are they going to send them elsewhere? I mean, what exactly are they doing to crack down, quote unquote?
So there are immigration, National Guard, state police checkpoints as you get closer to Oaxaca City, because that highway does eventually to Mexico City, right? And then obviously to the rest of the country. So I think that's one reason why the migrants that I spoke to, they still have that determination to try to reach our border because they haven't gone through that gauntlet yet. Unlike the migrants that Todd spoke to when he was in Mexico City, because obviously that reality, that stark reality of how much harder it's become is a lot more clear to them. So I actually wouldn't be surprised that the people that I spoke to, if they make it that far, I wouldn't be surprised if they, being harassed by Mexican officials and even the criminal organizations, I wouldn't be surprised if then at that point they decide to go home. And so I think the numbers will thin out even more. And I think that's kind of the approach that Mexico is taking, where they're basically going to try to tire them out and holding them in certain places, making sure that they have travel papers, whether they get them or not. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing more of now, to where it's less window dressing and actually more action, where they actually hold people and then they just hire them out and wait for them to just give up on their own, which obviously is that only goes so far. But then that's why it's good to have a new administration, to where if they do make it to our border, they're not going to get in illegally like they have been able to for the past 4 years.
Julio Rosas, we appreciate the update as always.
Of course. Thanks.
Matthew, it's great to have Julio down there and doing the reporting there from Mexico, bringing us the story directly.
Yeah, no, we're going to hear a lot more from him in the coming days. There'll be video and obviously articles on the website, and we'll have him on the show soon. We're just talking to him before the show about this. It's a really important trip because you actually do need to go down and see what the heck is going on. It's kind of a mystery, to a lot of us, how exactly this works. And now here, hopefully the end, we can, we can see what's going on and help put pressure on people to do the right thing.